Alright, let's look at some fairy tales. Folk and fairy tales, I think I'd call this section. This is like my favorite shelf in the house, one of them. St. Andrew Lang's picture book cover. That'll be different. Let's see what we've got here. You know, folk and fairy tales are pretty awesome. Also, if you read the biographies of any of the great writers, it's what everybody pretty much grew up with. And there's so much archetypal stuff that goes into them. All that hero's journey stuff was deduced out of the stories that people tell, you know. Here's African folk tales about Spider. Good stuff. Spider or Anansi is so interesting. He changes forms. Sometimes he's a spider, sometimes he's a person, sometimes he's a spider person. It's not really a big deal which. Spider's a little like Coyote in Native American tales. Thai tales, folk tales of Thailand. Pretty cool. Honestly, if you see stories from anywhere that are labeled folk or fairy tales, grab them. This is written by one person, but L. Frank Baum does such a good job of making these feel like American fairy tales that I really appreciate this book. Read it a lot as a kid. This one's kind of interesting. Yeah, what do you do with mythology? You know, you don't want to say people's beliefs or myths or whatever, but they definitely end up adjacent to folk tales quite often. This one's kind of interesting, talking about the stories of the Bible that are delivered in such a different way in America these days, but looking at them in their folkloric cultural sense. This one's this is like a 30s book, very old. Oriental Fairy Tales. Beautiful book. It used to be part of a larger set I had. MCM33. Wait. 1903. Oh, it's really old. Okay. Beautiful illustrations in this one. This book is just a beautiful book. Greek myths. Good stuff. Heroes and monsters. 9 witch tales. Love these old paperbacks for younger readers too. They're always so pretty. Oh, here's a great one. Grimm's Fairy Tales. Look at that. Hercules and Other Tales. Grimm's Fairy Tales. What do I know about this one? I think I grew up with it. I feel like this was oft around. This might have been my first wife's book as a kid. But I think I remember reading from it to my kids. Great Fairy Tales of Ireland. Classic. That place has great lore. So much good Celtic stuff. Glad to have that. Oh, this is a rather famous collection of fairy tales. Arthur Rackham's. Terrible binding. Ugh, how sad. Oh, look. Some cool art from a kiddo. Love that. I remember this one not being the most appropriate version of some of these fairy tales. Like it calls like someone a saucy slut or something like that. Fables of Aesop. I feel like Aesop's fables had a much bigger presence culturally and mentally when I was growing up. I was so aware of Aesop's fables growing up. I feel like if you brought up Aesop now, most young people would look at you blank. I wonder. Classic tales with morals of animals. Little Reader's Digest has done so much to keep good stuff in print. Fairy tales. Nice little modern thing. Used to be pretty common. I remember seeing like 10 of these at a book sale. This is an all-time favorite collection. This is a big youthful influence on me. Ride with the Sun from the United Nations Women's Guild. I think of stories in here all the time, like the deer and the jaguar, the people watching the light of the fire from a distant mountain. There's so much good stuff in here. The coat of Slime from a Dog's Eye from an Ohio folktale that's in here. There is so much that can make you see ghosts. This is a great compilation of folk and fairy tales and cultural stories. Pretty awesome. This is the kind of stuff I grew up with. I got this copy, I think it was this copy, from the American International Library in 2nd grade. American International School, the school I went to for 1 year in Austria when we moved over there, an English-speaking school where all these diplomats went. Book, I'm not sure if it should go in this section or not. It's currently in the picture book section. I guess it'll stay in the picture book section, but these are Australian folk tales. Tales from the dream time. And they're some of the oldest recorded human stories and mythologies, and they're amazing and strange. This is an interesting book, and all my kids loved it growing up. They loved it. This was a very popular bedtime read for all 4 of my kids. This one has been in the fairy tales section. It's Native American trickster tales, but it's a graphic novel or graphic collection of stories, so it's getting switched to the new comics section. This guy has a lot of different artists. Very cool. We'll find a place for that one later. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, this is one of my favorites as a kid. Where did this come from? I read it so many times. Iranian or Persian folk and fairy tales. Yeah, there's a lot of really good ones in there. Loved having books. I really was lucky to grow up with great stuff. A variety of interesting works from around the world. Really were good for my youthful mind, maybe. The other day I misremembered this artist. Drawings by Stephen Gamble. Not the person who drew something else I was looking at. But what iconic images. I really felt like the movie adaptation of these stories, among its many mistakes, was not using the style of this art in any way. And these books have been re-released at different times with different art. They're essentially all urban legends, retold for younger audiences, kind of a shared tone. There's 3 of these books, but I just have this one. Did get the whole set for my daughter Sonora at one point. Maybe she didn't keep them, or she has them in her room. This is a big book of ancient tales and folklore of Japan. More recent acquisition, so I don't know it well, but I bet it's great. This one I grew up with as well, The Arabian Nights. It's abridged. I always found it very hard to find the original collection of 1001 Arabian Nights with Scheherazade telling all the stories. I feel like I've only seen a full edition of that once or twice in my life, maybe. It's a beautiful antique copy of Andersen's Fairy Tales, though it's not in the best shape. It's very poor binding, and it's taped up a little bit. But it's old. Any collectors out there want this thing? I need money. And it is beautiful. It's a beautiful book. But perhaps it might even be approaching that phase of bookdom where it gets chopped up and turned into lots of art. Framed, every color page framed and so on. For now, it stays. Myths, Eileen O'Brien, good old Dover. Navajo Indian myths. Talk about that word Indian, this is probably pretty old. Fairy tales from many lands. Oh, Arthur Rackham again. Wait, do I have 2 copies of this one? No, they're different. They're just both Arthur Rackham. Okay. I love Italo Calvino. Here's his collection and retelling of Italian folk tales. Pretty famous. Some who love it. I think it's alright. I think it's an interesting curiosity for sure. It's weird to me how, wow, look what was in there. Pronto, Wednesday, August 25th, 1982. Dear Ali, I thought you might like this shirt. I hardly wore it. I hope all is well with you and that the ultrasound was fine. We are doing just fine. Matthew is a little dull. He was starving. I now give him 3 supplements after I nurse him and cereal 3 times a day. I think my mom is coming back next week for a visit. That should be nice. Saw Margie last week. She's nauseous all the time. Take care. Enjoy your pregnancy. The work comes later, but it gets easier every day. Love, Ellen. Are there 3 different pregnancies referred to in this? That's interesting. Pronto. That's some crazy ephemera. I think that's got to stay out. I don't remember encountering that in here before, and I have read to my kids from here. From $120 down to $850. 1981 book. I found a lot of these interesting, but thought they were like derivative of other more familiar fairy tales, just copied and pasted over to Italy. Boy. Huh. These different. Lots of lore. Anyway, I'm sure it's great. Maybe someday I'll read it all. I've read from it to my kids and kind of got an idea of it a number of times. Now here's a book that has really, really influenced me. This is one of the books I read the most as a kid. I loved Stories for Children by Isaac Bashevis Singer. How did this book find me? My sister Leanne recommended it. One time I saved up a bunch of money and she took me book shopping to buy all these things on my list. And she was like, get this too, and get this, and get this. I think this might have been one she put in my path. But Zlata the Goat is just one of the great stories. Somebody that survives by escaping a snowstorm inside to a giant haystack with a goat. And it's incredible. Or all the stories of the elders of Chelm, these foolish people. I mean, I spent a lot of time with this book as a kid. Read and reread. Oh, look. This was our bookstore. The only English language bookstore in Vienna. I had no idea that one of these bookmarks was still in my life. Wow. Yeah, we used to go to that all the time, and they would have these in a cup by the door. Somebody made them and laminated them. Printed it. That weird telephone number. Oh, it's just, no, it's 7-digit. Huh. Terrible binding. Of course, the thing I'm always looking for in old kids' books is a Nolan Ryan rookie baseball card that I hid in one of my children's books long ago. Never seen again. A gift I immediately regretted hiding. Okay, and these are the last folk and fairy tale books from the orange case. They're from the next shelf, except for the Andrew Lang fairy tale books, which I'm going to do for their own video. The Dictionary of Mythical Places. Now, this is a little different. Could go in references, honestly, but it's cool how it describes all these fictional worlds. I've read this. It's good. I like it, and I like books like this. It's from Scandinavia. Okay, here we got some Norse mythology. Oh, and I've got the Delaire's Norse myths somewhere. I should look for that one too. That is some interesting stuff. Very mixed up with Viking conquests and literal history. This is old, obviously, from how it's presented. American Indian fairy tales. They're not really fairy tales. I mean, they sometimes, I guess. Yeah, what makes a fairy tale? Do they have to be European? No, not really. But this is a handsome book. Nice looking book. Probably read from it to my kids before. And here are a couple more. The Delaire's books of myths are so incredible. Their Greek one is amazing. Maybe the most influential book of my childhood. I loved it so much. Read it so many times. Also loved this one. Norse mythology. Their drawings are the best. They were my version of Greek myths in the way that the Percy Jackson books have been for my son. I also loved that book Mythology by Edith Hamilton. But here's the Norse one. It's pretty good. My kids left the Greek one out on the trampoline one night and it got rained on. I'm like, take care of your books. I saw that it, despite being waterlogged, it ended up in my daughter's school library. I'm like, okay. This was from the picture books section as well, but it is a collection of fairy tales. And it was very popular with my kids when they were young. It's interesting how these have so many different versions, you know, the mutations. So yeah, I took all those out, and there's still the Lang ones to look at, and we will. Oh, we already looked at Edith Hamilton's mythology and Grimm's fairy tales, Andersen's fairy tales in a previous video. But yeah, fairy tales, folk and fairy tales, myths, all those beautiful, deep, true archetypal stories we tell to children and each other. Sammy the Crow, who remembered, remembers. He knows. He remembers. Sammy never forgets. Baby squirrel tested. BP approved. What's up, kitty? Well, where your mother went? Where's Prisma? Alright, fairy tales, fucking fairy tales, the good stuff. If I was to dive back into the topic of fairy tales, though, I think what I would do at this stage of my life, if I ever wanted to really be influenced by them, and I've thought about this, I would just read all of these. All of them. tried to get my kids to do that forever. I'll be like, I'll pay you. First one of you that reads all these, $50. All right. Well, y'all take care. Thanks for watching. You see that booklets one was over an hour long? That's crazy. What's that about? What is this channel even? Frankly, it's obscene, Baby Squirrel. You should be ashamed. Book added to the comic section. Return to the kids book section, picture book section. Some new bulletin board stuff. Need to get like a cup for bookmarks. You were thinking like a historian if you can. Put these away later. All right, folks. Don't forget this channel has a PayPal at Michael Farrell Smith. PayPal. Why not? Why not just? You were gonna throw your money in a pit in the backyard anyway. You know, to be found in future centuries. Why not help someone out now in your own century who does a weird book channel? Help the kiddies! Especially this one. Alright, remember folks, nothing is real. This isn't real. It's an illusion. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.